All right, this is notes and rests part 2. So in the first part, I was showing you how to read whole notes and half notes and quarter notes and shows you all the rests and stuff. Hopefully you are already familiar with all of that stuff. And then today we're going to be dealing with eighth notes and 16th notes and something weird called dotted notes. So let's jump right in and take a look at that. Hopefully you're already familiar with the concept of all of this stuff right here, where a quarter note gets a single beat, and then if you had 4 of them, it would take up 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you use up that whole entire thing. If not, then you might not be ready for this lesson, so you might want to go back and check out some of those other videos. But if you are already familiar with that, then let's talk about eighth notes. Now, an eighth note is technically worth half a beat. It looks like one of these things right here. It's got a little flag on it. And so it's technically worth half a beat, but we don't want to change the size of the beat. Hopefully you notice here that this beat up here is the same exact size as this beat right here. So we haven't changed really the value of the quarter note at all. It's taking up 1 beat, same exact value as always. But once we start using eighth notes, we start needing syllables or sounds to indicate which half of the beat we're talking about. We're talking about the first half of the beat or the second half of the beat. If we just say 1, we're talking about the first half of the beat. Now we're going to add in something called and, right? And so every time we say and now, we've got this other half of the beat. So instead of counting, before we were using quarter notes and we were going 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Now, if we count the exact same thing, all quarter notes, we're going to count 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Same speed, that sounds exactly the same, only what I'm saying has changed because I've split up the beat now into the first half and the second half. Now that I've got syllables for the first and the second half of the beat, now I can put notes in there and start playing these things, these eighth notes, and you see how they compare to the quarter notes. We've got 1 and then we've got 2 and, 3 and, 4 and. So now this sounds like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. If I just go back and forth between the two, we got 1, 2, 3, these are quarter notes, 4, 1 and 2 and 3, these are eighth notes, and then back to quarter notes. So now the quarter notes are actually longer than the eighth notes, but the eighth notes, the size of the beat hasn't been changed by the fact that we're introducing eighth notes. So that's how an eighth note works. It's worth half a beat, and once we start using them, we start having to use the counts and in between each of the numbers. Now, the problem is, if we add another flag to an eighth note, we've got the eighth note, this is the head, this part is called the stem, and then this part over here is called the flag. If we add another flag, now that note is called a 16th note. A 16th note is worth 1/2 of an eighth note, or 1/4 of a beat, 1/4 of a quarter note, 1/4 of a quarter note. So then 16th notes match up like this. And as you can see here, now we need like 4 different syllables for each beat. We can't just count 1 and have that count for an entire beat. We need 4 different parts of beat 1. So we've got the first part, 1, and then we've got the second part, E and Now you can see if we're counting 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a, then these eighth notes, are going to be worth 2 of those syllables because now there's 4 parts to each beat. So a eighth note being worth half of a beat is now going to be worth 2 syllables if we're counting 4 syllables per beat. That's a lot of math in there, but hopefully the diagram makes more sense than maybe the words that I'm saying here. So then our eighth notes are on each of those beats. So now instead of being 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and same exact tempo, same exact notes, I'm just going to count twice as fast now with 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. The notes are still coming in on the 1 and the and, but now I've got this E and this in between so that I can count 16th notes if I want to. This bottom line right here would sound something like 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. Sound now going through all 3 of those, just quarter notes would be 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a, eighths, 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and 1 E and a, and then these are my 16ths, 4 E and a. So that's the eighths and the 16ths and how those work. If we check out an example here, on the next page I've got this example of these notes. So this thing right here, that note by itself, let's zoom in so we can see this better. Let's go ahead and count with the E and As. Since we see that we have 16ths coming up, we know that we're going to need to split these beats up into 4 parts. So this first note is a quarter note. It's worth one whole entire beat. That whole entire beat is 1 E and A. So you've got 1 E and A is that first note. And then this next one, also a quarter note, also worth one whole beat. So it's going to be 2 E and A. So you've got 1 E and A, 2 E and A. Now we've got these dreaded 16th notes here. So there's going to be 1, there's going to be E, there's going to be and A. Because each of them is worth 1/4 of a beat, except that now we're on beat 3. So it's going to be 3 E and A. So we've got 1 E and A, 2 E and A, and then 3 E and A. This one right here is an 8th note. We can tell because there's only one bar there. The bars and the flags are pretty much the same thing. If you got 2 bars, it's a 16th note. If you got 2 flags, it's a 16th note. 1 bar or 1 flag means 8th note. So this right here is worth 1/2 of a beat. And at this point now, a half of a beat is 2/4 of a beat. So it's going to be 4 E. And then this one over here is going to be and A. So the last 2 notes in the measure are going to be 4 E and A. So altogether we have 1 E and A, 2 E and A, 3 E and A, 4 E and A. And that's how those work. Of course, we got a whole note down here as an example. That would just hold out for the entire 1 E and A, 2 E and A, 3 E and A, 4 E and A. So that's the whole note. It's just as simple as a whole note has always been. So that's how we're counting the 8th notes and the 16th notes. But like I said, there's still one more crazy part left that's going to kind of confuse all this stuff, and that's the dotted notes. Let's check those out. Okay, I'm going to say this. It's not going to make sense. That I'm going to show you. And then you're going to say the exact same thing as me, only it's going to make sense then. So here we go. A dot on a note adds half again the original value. Not helpful at all. That is the best way I've ever heard it described, and it makes no sense. So let's check this out. This note right here is called a dotted half note. Half note because it's got the half note, and dotted because it's got the dot there. So again, creative names here in music. So this note right here is worth more than a half note. A half note would normally be worth 2 beats. So the dot adds half of the original value. 2 is the original value. Half of that would be 1. So the dotted half note is worth a grand total of 3. They're forcing you to do math every single time they give you a dotted note. So you take the original value, you take half of that, and you add it to the original value, and that is the total value of the entire note. So this note right here is worth 3 beats. Normally a half note would be worth 1, 2, and then where that dot is going to add that extra beat on there. So over here, that equals that. If you tied these 2 notes together, then that would be the value of 1 dotted half note. The counting is going to be 1, 2, 3. Let's see a couple other examples. This one over here, that's a dotted quarter note. Oh man! All right, so a quarter note was worth 1 beat before. Half of 1 beat is 1/2. So you're going to add 1/2 to the original value, which was 1. You're going to come up with 1.5, not quite 2 beats. So this one right here is the same as these 2 notes together if you added them together. So this would be, normally that'd be 1 and then this one over here would be 2. So the way that you would count all of these together would be 1 and 2. Let's try one more. So here we go. This is a dotted 8th note. An 8th note is usually worth, it's usually worth half of a beat, and half of a beat is 1/4 of a beat, or 1/4 of a beat. So we had half a beat, which would be like 1 E, and then we need half of that, which is 1/4 of a beat. We're going to add that to it, so it would be and. So this note right here is the equivalent of if you took these 2 notes and tied them together, the 8th note and the 16th note, which is why it gets counted 1 E and. So that's dotted notes. Let's check out a couple examples down here at the bottom. So first thing here, we've got this dotted half note. Worth, well, the half note's worth, it'd normally be 1, 2, so we can get that out of the way. All right, so half of that is 1 extra beat. We need to give it 1 extra beat, 1, 2, 3. Hopefully this is gonna work out. This note right here is a quarter note. It's worth 1 beat, so it would get beat 4. Whew, it all worked out. Cool, we did that one. Next one. This one right here is a quarter note worth 1 beat. Now we see that we've got an 8th note that's coming up, so we should probably start using the ands here. We don't have any 16th notes, so we should probably use the and. So we're going to count 1 and. This one right here is worth 1 whole beat, so we're going to count 2 and. Now this one right here we go. Normally it'd be worth 3 and, right? That'd be like the quarter note. It's worth 2 halves of a beat. But this dot right here adds half of the original value, which was originally 1 whole beat. We need an extra half of a beat, so we would put 4 right there and hope this works out. So over here, finally this last note right here, this is an 8th note. It's worth half of a beat. The next half of a beat that we have available is the and of 4, and we went 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and it worked out. Cool. And then the rest of this here, the rest of your example is all just quarter notes and whole notes. So these notes here, if we play them in order, the rhythm would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's the rhythm of dotted notes. Again, they add half again the original value. So the way that you probably say that is you take the original value and you cut it in half and add it to it. Only that sounds more complicated now. So a dot adds half the original value. I still think that's the best way to say it. Anyway, that's 8th notes and 16th notes and dotted notes. Of course, that's not all of the notes that there are, but if you found a way to either come up with a better way of saying that, or you have other comments or questions, or if you've just taken this concept and taken it to the next level, I would love to hear from you. Send me a video, send me an email, something like that. But there's our second parts of notes and rests and values. Good luck. Have fun.